The sun burned high above the desert. The wind carried dust like knives, cutting through dry air. The ground cracked under every step. Mark sat inside his small metal cabin, shirt off, sweat rolling down his back. He hadn't seen another soul in days. His water tank was almost empty. The solar panels were half dead. Even the sand rats had stopped coming around. He took a slow sip from his last canteen, careful not to spill a single drop. The air inside was thick with heat. His old radio sat dead on the shelf, the signal long gone. Then came a sound, soft but sharp. Knock. Mark froze. It wasn't the wind. It wasn't a rock falling. It was a knock, clear and slow, on his front door. He stood slowly, grabbed the metal bar he used for defense, and moved to the door. No one knocked here. Not in this dead zone. He unlocked the latch and opened the door. She stood there swaying, an alien woman, pale blue skin, long silver hair tied behind her back. Her eyes, large and glowing faintly, were full of fear and pain. In her arms, she held a small child, no older than 5. The child's face was dry, lips cracked, eyes half closed. "Please," the woman whispered, voice shaking. "My daughter needs water." Then, without another word, she dropped to her knees. Her legs gave out. Her arms barely held the girl as she leaned forward and collapsed at his feet. Mark didn't speak. He looked at the girl, then at the mother. He could see bones under there. Skinde was starving. Dying. He moved fast. He carried them inside. He laid the mother on the old couch and placed the child on the bed in the back room. The cabin was hot, but better than outside. He opened his hidden water reserve, his emergency stash. He poured a cup, just one, and took it to the child first. "Here," he said, holding it to her lips. She blinked at him, weak and slow, but drank. Every drop, not a single one spilled. Her little hand touched his for just a second. Trembling, he sat beside her, silent. Then he checked on the mother. Her chest was rising and falling, shallow but steady. He brought her water next. For the next hour he said nothing. He wiped their skin with a wet cloth. He crushed a dried fruit ration and fed tiny bites to the girl. She coughed, but ate. When the sun began to fall, the mother opened her eyes. "You're human," she said softly. Mark nodded. "You're not," he replied. She gave a weak smile. "Not anymore," she said. "Not to them." "Who's them?" Mark asked. She looked toward the window, then at her child. "They chased us," she said, voice slow across 3 zones. "I kept moving at night, hid during the day. We lost our last water 2 days ago." Mark looked at her arms. There were dark marks, burned scars, some fresh. "Who did this?" She shook her head. "If I say, they'll find you too." Mark sat back, thinking. This wasn't just some lost traveler. Someone powerful wanted her gone. "What's her name?" he asked. Pointing at the girl nearer, she whispered, reaching for her daughter's hand. "Mine is Lyra." Mark nodded slowly. He wanted to ask more, but he saw fear in her eyes. She wasn't ready. He stood up. "You both can stay tonight. Rest. I'll figure things out in the morning." Lyra grabbed his wrist suddenly. "Thank you," she said, eyes filled with tears. "You didn't have to." Mark looked down at her. "No," he said, "but I did." That night, he sat by the door, weapon in hand. The wind outside was strong, but something else rode on it. A feeling, like they were being watched. He kept the lights low. Every sound made his heart beat faster. He wasn't scared for himself, not now. He had faced worse during the wars. But this was different. This was a mother and child, alone in a world that wanted them dead. And somehow, they had come to him. Out of all the places they had knocked on his door. Mark didn't believe in signs. He didn't believe in fate. But something had changed the moment he heard that knock. And whatever was coming next. He was not going to let them take that little girl. Not while he was alive. Mark woke up to silence, but it wasn't peaceful. It was the kind of silence that pressed on the skin, thick and heavy. He looked out the narrow window. The desert looked still, but something felt wrong. He had lived alone out here for too long to ignore it. The wind wasn't moving right. The sand wasn't shifting like usual. He stepped outside with his boots half laced, carrying his old binoculars. The sun hadn't fully risen yet, and the horizon was still a line of deep blue shadows. Then he saw them. Tracks. Not animal tracks. Not sand rat trails. Boot prints. Fresh. And not just one pair, 3 or 4, walking in a wide circle around the cabin like someone had been watching. Someone had been out here in the dark, just beyond the range of the motion lights. Mark walked the path slowly, tracking the prints. He found a spot on the far side of the hill where the sand had been disturbed. Someone had knelt there maybe. Waited. He clenched his jaw. Whoever they were, they hadn't come to trade. Back inside, Lyra was awake, sitting up on the couch, holding her child close. Lyra was sleeping soundly for the first time, wrapped in one of Mark's old army jackets. Lyra looked up at him. She saw his face. "She knew they found me," she said. Mark didn't ask how. He already knew. People like her weren't just running from hunger. They were running from chains, from power, from cruelty with money behind it. "I saw 4 sets of tracks," he said. "They stayed hidden." Lyra swallowed hard. "They're called Red Suns," she said. her voice low. Slavers, but worse. Mark sat down. Explain. She nodded slowly, like this part hurt more than anything else. My husband tried to free our people. He exposed what the syndicates were doing, taking children, selling blood. They branded him a traitor, then killed him. She looked at the sleeping Nero. They said, my daughter has the same blood gift. Healing, pure, rare, the kind they can harvest. Mark's fists tightened. You mean they want to cut it out of her? Lyra nodded, her voice cracked. Yes, that's why we ran. Mark stood up fast. He paced across the room. He had seen war. He had seen soldiers die in his arms, but this hunting a child for her body, this was worse. I've got old gear, he said. Defense net, sensor spikes, some traps. Not much, but enough to make them think twice. You'll help us? She asked, tears rising again. I already did, he said, looking at the child, and I'm not about to stop now. Lyra covered her mouth, holding back a sob. Just then, a sound hit the window. Dash clicked on. Mark ducked low. He rolled to the corner, grabbed his plasma rifle, and peered outside. Nothing moved. But then he saw it, a red mark. Someone had thrown a small glass shard against his window. On the back of it, painted with dried blood, was a symbol, a triangle with a cut through it. Lyra saw it too. Her whole body stiffened. They're marking us, she whispered. It means prepare for collection. Mark stepped outside again, this time with his rifle ready. He checked the perimeter. The wind was picking up. Dust was flying now, and he knew it would only get harder to see as the day heated. He turned back and said, we've got one night to prepare. Inside, he pulled crates out from under the floor. Gear from his soldier days, motion sensors, clay snares, mirror decoys, a few charged mines. Lyra helped without being asked. She moved with care, speed, and silent fear. By noon, Mark had set up for perimeter traps and buried a stun line under the sand. He connected the power cells to the cabin's old battery pack. Lyra moved nearer to a corner bed, surrounding it with stacked crates and heat dampener. She held her close, whispering something in their alien tongue later. As the sun fell again and the sky turned purple, Mark took one last look outside. The desert looked empty, but it wasn't. He felt them, waiting, watching. He turned to Lyra. If anything happens, take her and run to the ridge. There's a cave under the third rock face. You'll be safe there for a while. She looked at him with fear and respect. Why are you doing this for us? Mark didn't answer right away. He stared at Lyra, peaceful in sleep. Because someone once did it for me, he said, and I didn't deserve it either. Outside, the first flash of red light flickered on the far ridge. They were coming. It was just past midnight when the scream broke the silence. Mark jumped up, grabbing his rifle and aiming toward the corner of the cabin. But it wasn't an enemy. It was the child Lyra. She was sitting up in bed, eyes wide open, shaking hard, both hands gripping the sides of her head. They're coming, Mama. The burning men, they're going to take me. No fire, no cages. Mark rushed to her side. Lyra wrapped her arms around the girl, whispering in her own language, but Lyra kept screaming. Mark knelt beside them. What's the burning place? Lyra stopped suddenly and looked at him. Her little eyes were glowing faintly in the dark. She whispered one word, harvest. The air inside the cabin turned cold. Mark sat back, breathing slow. He wasn't sure what scared him more, the word, or how calmly she had said it. Lyra stroked Lyra's hair and whispered, she sees things before they happen. You mean like a vision? Lyra nodded. She was born with it. It's rare, but they knew. That's why they want her. It's not just healing. Her blood connects to something old, something hidden. Mark stood and paced again. Then that scream, it was real. Lyra didn't answer. Outside, the desert wind roared louder than before. The solar panels rattled. The motion lights flickered on, then off, then on again. Something was interfering with the system. Mark checked the sensors. One was disabled. Then two. They're here, he said, and they're testing the fence. He ran to the wall and pulled out a map carved into the floorboards. There's a hidden tunnel under this cabin, he said, built in case one ever needed to disappear. It leads to the ridge. Lyra looked confused. Why didn't you tell me before? Because I didn't want to give up this fight yet. Just then Lyra crawled out of the bed and walked straight to the window. Her hands touched the glass. They're wearing fire suits, she whispered. Their faces are burned. One has a needle, a long one. It wants to go into my neck. Mark rushed to pull her away, but she didn't move. She was frozen, eyes wide, breathing fast. She's still seeing it, Lyra said, pulling Lyra close. Mark turned toward the back wall. Get what you can. I'll buy time. No, Lyra said suddenly. There's something I need to show you first. She walked to her bag, pulled out a small silver stone, and placed it in Mark's hand. The stone pulsed once with light. His vision blurred. In the next second, Mark saw a room, round walls, hundreds of children in glass tubes, all glowing red, machines drawing liquid from them, and in the center a man in black robes laughing. Then it was gone, Mark gasped. That's what they do, Lyra said. That's the burning place. Mark stared at the stone. Is this what's in her blood? It's a memory stone, Lyra said. Her father gave it to her when she was born. She doesn't just see the future, she feels what's coming. Mark looked at Lyra. She had fallen asleep again, drained by the vision. He stood quickly. We don't have much time. He stepped outside, rifle ready. The sand blew around him, but in the distance he saw lights, red, 4 of them, moving in a straight line. Then one stopped and raised something to the air. A signal device. Mark aimed and fired. The bolt hit the ground near the figure and exploded into flame. The others scattered. He ran back inside. They're closer than I thought. Lyra grabbed her daughter and said, "We go now." Mark hesitated. "One more trap, then we move." He opened a crate and pulled out a flare beacon and an old military voice box. "What's that?" Lyra asked. Mark smiled. "Something to make them think I'm crazy enough to stay." He left the beacon blinking in the window and played a looping message through the voice box. "This property is armed. You have made your last mistake. One more step and I burn the sky." It was an old threat from his war days, but sometimes sound and madness scared enemies more than guns. Back in the cabin, he opened the trapdoor under the bed. The tunnel smelled of rust and dust. He turned to Lyra. "You first, I'll follow." Lyra went in, holding Nira tight against her chest. As Mark closed the hatch, he heard one last sound above, a boot, right on top of the roof. The burning men had arrived, but by the time they crashed through the door, Mark was already gone. The cabin was burning. From far up the rocky ridge, Mark watched the fire rise into the night sky. Orange and red danced across the sand. The wind carried black smoke toward the stars. It wasn't just destruction. It was a message, and not from him. They had found his home and destroyed it. Nira shivered in Lyra's arms as they crouched behind a boulder. Mark kept his rifle aimed at the lower path. Below, 4 figures walked among the flames, dark armor, long blades, red visors. They didn't look like slavers anymore. They looked like soldiers on a mission. But what chilled Mark most wasn't the fire. It was the symbol they left behind. Burned into the dirt with something sharp glowing faintly from embers was the same triangle with a slash across it, but now it had a circle around it, fresh blood drawn at its center. Lyra gasped. "That, Mark, it means they don't plan to chase anymore." Mark narrowed his eyes. "Then what do they plan?" "They'll wait," she said. "Wait until we run out of hiding places. Until we're weak. Then they come like ghosts." Mark shook his head. "Then we'll stop running." He turned to face the mountains ahead. He had one place left, an old fuel station built during the war, buried under the ground. It had power, thick walls, and most important, a working distress. "Pecan, we move now," he said, before they spread out. The journey through the rocky paths was rough. Nira was tired, her feet dragging. Lyra looked near collapse. Mark gave Nira his jacket and carried her in his arms. As they walked, the desert changed. The sand turned to stone, the wind grew colder, and shadows stretched longer. Then Nira spoke again, voice low and dreamlike. "They're not following us." Mark stopped. "How do you know?" "They're ahead." His blood turned cold. Mark motioned for silence and crouched low, scanning the path ahead. Rocks, dust, darkness. Small spikes stuck in the ground, barely visible, shaped like a fang. Mark swore under his breath. "Landmine sensor," he whispered. "They've planted traps." "How did they know our path?" Lyra asked. "They didn't," Mark said. "They guessed I'd go here. This is what I would do." He stepped carefully forward and disarmed the first trap. Then the next. He cleared 3 before reaching a flat wall of rock. It looked solid, but Mark knew better. He touched a stone on the left side. It clicked, and a part of the wall slid open, revealing a dark tunnel. They entered the fuel station inside. It was cold and silent. Dust clung to the walls. Old lights flickered above, but the air was clean, and the door sealed behind them with a thick iron sound. Nira coughed weakly. Mark found a blanket and wrapped her up. Lyra looked around. "How long can we stay here?" Mark went to a console in the back. 3 days, maybe 4. Enough time to charge the beacon. "But will anyone come?" Lyra asked. "I don't know," Mark said, "but we'll make them listen." He activated the beacon, then stared at the blinking red light. The message began transmitting an emergency signal in an old human military code. Lyra sat beside Nira, who was now asleep. Again, but then her voice shook. "I had a husband once," she said. "He was strong, brave, but he never looked back. He always ran forward, even when we begged him to rest." Mark listened without speaking. He believed he could save us all. But he forgot one thing: he had to survive first. She looked up at Mark. "Don't make his mistake." Mark nodded slowly. "I'm not like him, you are," she said, "but that's not always bad." Just then, the warning light blinked on the console. Motion detected outside the station. Mark grabbed his rifle and checked the monitor. For life signs, no heat signatures. They were masking themselves, but one was small, very small. He frowned. "That's not possible." Lyra stood. "What is it?" "One of them is the same size as your daughter." Lyra clutched Nira tight. "They cloned her." "No," Mark said, his voice hard. "They're using children to lure us out." He turned off the lights and powered down the outer sensors. The enemy wanted to play mind games now. They wanted him to doubt, but Mark had learned one thing during war: never let fear lead. Instead, he wrote a message on the fuel station's outer wall using red paint and his own blood. "You want her? Come and burn." He would not run anymore. Let them come. The first shot came before sunrise. It wasn't loud, it was silent, deadly. A burning line of red light sliced through the rocks above the old fuel station, cutting through stone like paper. The cave ceiling cracked. Dust rained down. Nira woke screaming. Mark grabbed her and rolled behind the supply crates as the second shot hit the ground near the door, shaking the walls. The siege had started. Outside, hidden in the sand and shadows, the red suns had come in full force. 6, maybe 8. Each in armor that shimmered like heat waves. Each carrying weapons designed for one thing: extraction. Lyra clutched Nira close, whispering calming words in their language, but her eyes were full of fear. She had seen this before. She knew what came next. Mark stood, rifle in hand, sweat already rolling down his back despite the cold air. He activated the fuel station's inner shield, a last resort energy wall that could hold for only 30 minutes. "They're testing our defenses," he said, "trying to break us before they break in." Lyra moved beside him. "What do we do? We don't wait." He opened a locked chest and pulled out a small black Cuban old human prototype grenade, the kind banned by most planets. He pressed it into her hand. "If I don't come back, use this on the tunnel wall. Collapse it. Get out with Nira through the back shaft." Lyra's hands shook. "No, you're not going alone." Mark looked at Nira. "She needs someone to live for her." Then, before Lyra could stop him, he opened the hatch and vanished into the rising dust outside. The world beyond the station was alive with movement. Mark kept low, using the rocks for cover. He saw 2 red suns to his right setting up a pulse cannon. If that fired, the whole station would crumble. He didn't wait. He tossed a flash mine into the wind. Boom! The burst of light blinded the soldiers. Mark moved fast, firing low and hard. One soldier dropped. The other stumbled back, trying to retreat, but Mark tackled him, slamming the rifle butt into his mask. Crack! The man stopped moving. But then Mark heard the sound he feared most: crunching gravel behind him. A third figure stood just feet away, blade raised out too close. Mark raised his arm just as the blade came down. The edge tore through his jacket, cutting deep into his shoulder. He grunted, pain flashing across his vision. He fired, point blank. The blast sent both of them flying. Mark hit the rocks hard, blood soaking his sleeve. He crawled backward, vision blurring, but he still saw them. 4 more figures, advancing slowly. No more hiding. He activated the beacon on his chest inside the fuel station. Lyra saw the signal red blinking. Fast. Emergency. She didn't hesitate. She kissed Nira's forehead, whispered something, then grabbed her blade and stormed into the tunnel. She found Mark crouched, one arm limp, rifle gone. "I told you to run," he growled. "I'm not him," she said, "but I can still fight." She helped him up. Together they stood as the red sun circled them. Then Nira's voice echoed from behind. "Stop." They all turned. The child stood barefoot in the dust, eyes glowing brighter than before. "You hurt him," she said softly. The red suns paused. One of them lowered his weapon, and then she raised her hand. A light burst from her palm, golden pure, sharp like a knife made of sun. It hit the closest soldier and sent him flying. The others fired, but the beams bent, twisted, missed. Mark stared. "What is she?" Lyra didn't speak. She watched her daughter step forward, hair lifting like wind was passing through her soul. "I'm not going with you," Nira said. "I'm going to stay with my papa." The light hit again, this time in every direction. Blinding. When it faded, the red suns were gone, not dead, just gone, burned away into nothing but black ash. Mark dropped to his knees, breathing hard. Lyra ran to Nira and held her close, tears streaming down her face. Mark looked at them both. He had seen weapons. He had seen monsters, but never had he seen a child burn through darkness with nothing but will and love. "She saved us," he whispered. Lyra nodded. She chose to. Mark looked around at the quiet battlefield, at the dust, at the ash. "They'll send more," he said. "I know," Lyra replied. "But now they know who she is," Mark added, rising to his feet. Nira walked over and hugged his leg. "They won't take me," she whispered. "Not while you're here." And for the first time since the knocking at his door, Mark believed it. They came wearing human faces. First, Mark thought it was rescue. The ship landed just beyond the rocks, clean polished, flying the flag of Earth's civil peacekeepers. A voice boomed from its speakers, smooth and calm. "This is Unit 17 of the Outer Law Enforcement Division. Please stand down. We are here to provide aid." Mark stood outside the fuel station, his wounded arm bandaged tight. He kept Nira behind him, one hand resting on the hilt of his rifle. Lyra stepped out slowly, holding her breath. They looked like peacekeepers, blue armor, friendly faces, even soft smiles. But Mark had seen real peacekeepers. These weren't them. He walked forward with slow steps, until he saw the man leading them, tall, sharp beard, no badge, no name, just cold eyes. Mark stopped. "What division are you from?" he asked loudly. "Outer Law," the man replied, nodding toward the ship. "Outer Law doesn't wear private boots," Mark said, pointing to the black treads. "Those or a syndicate issue." The man's smile didn't fade. "You're sharp." Mark raised his weapon. The man didn't flinch. "Don't worry. We're not here to take the girl by force." "She's not leaving," Mark said. "She doesn't belong to you." the man replied. She belongs to no one. The man sighed. Do you know how valuable she is? That child, she can restart a dying bloodline, heal broken flesh, fix dead systems. She's a miracle. She's a child, Mark said sharply. The man took a step closer. You're a lone war vet in a dust shelter, bleeding out with a stolen alien woman and her daughter. You can't win this. I don't have to win, Mark said. I just have to make you bleed harder. Behind him, Lyra whispered, they won't leave without a deal. Mark looked at her. Her eyes were calm, but tired. You have to offer them something. Mark thought hard. He hated deals. But this time, he had one last card. I'll give you a broadcast, he said. The syndicate man raised an eyebrow. Go on. I'll go live, Mark said, pulling out a recording unit. One channel, full spectrum. I'll show the galaxy that you're trying to take a child for profit. You can't hide from the public anymore. You think people care? The man laughed. They'll forget by morning. Maybe, Mark said. But someone out there will care. Someone stronger than you. There was silence, then the man smiled wider. You really want to make this messy, don't you? Mark said nothing. Suddenly the man signaled one of his guards, and from the back of the ship, they dragged out a surprise, a cage inside another child, alien, same age as Mira, same glowing eyes. Mira gasped. That's Mira, she whispered. They took her from the caves. She's like me. Mark stepped forward. You're using a child as bait. No, the man said. As insurance. If you don't give us your girl, we'll drain the other one publicly live. Lyra screamed and moved forward, but Mark stopped her. His hands trembled, his breath slowed. The rage boiled inside, and then he smiled. I was hoping you'd say that. He pressed the button on the recording unit. The entire scene, everything was already live, broadcasting across military bands, civil networks, pirate frequencies, across 5 systems. The man froze. One of his guards shouted, "Sir, we're being watched." Screams filled the background. People were already reacting. Mark pointed his rifle. Let the girl go. The man hesitated, but then did it. The cage opened. Mira ran to Lyra, crying, and the two hugged tightly. Lyra held both of them. The man stared at Mark. You think this ends here? He growled. Mark stepped forward, nose to nose. No, he said. It ends with you. He hit one last switch. A beacon behind the station exploded, flashing red and white. Suddenly, real peacekeepers dropped from orbit. Their ship roared above, armed and ready. The syndicate man tried to run, but Mark tackled him hard. Fists flew, blood spilled. Bones cracked. By the time the peacekeepers pulled Mark off, his knuckles were raw. They arrested the syndicate crew, took the ship, freed the stolen files inside. Mark stood with Lyra and the girls as the sun finally rose. His voice was hoarse. That was the price of protection, he said. Lyra nodded. And you paid it. Mark looked at Mira and Mira, their small hands holding each other. No, he said quietly. They did. The skies above the desert were finally quiet. Days had passed since the syndicate ship was taken. Real peacekeepers now guarded the ridge. Patrol drones circled the old fuel station. The war, at least this one, was over. But Mark hadn't left. He stood outside the cabin ruins, ash blowing across his boots. The place where it all began, the spot where she first knocked, barely standing, her daughter in her arms. He still remembered the sound, that soft knock, that desperate whisper. Please, my daughter needs water. Now, as the wind pulled at his coat, that same daughter stood beside him. Neera. She was stronger now. Her eyes still glowed, but not with fear. They glowed with calm, with choice behind them. Lyra and Myra stood together, helping the peacekeepers organize the rescued data from the syndicate ship. Dozens of names were revealed, children who had vanished, some alive, some gone. The galaxy had turned its eyes toward the truth, but the work had just begun. Mark watched Lyra place a smooth rock on the burned earth. What's that? He asked. A memory stone, she said, like the one Papa gave Mama, but this one's for here. Mark looked down. The rock shimmered faintly, pulsing with a soft golden light. Lyra smiled. It'll remember that we lived. Mark felt his throat tighten. You don't have to stay, you know. They said your people are building a new place, a school, a safe zone. Lyra looked up at him. Will you be there? He hesitated. I'm not a father. I'm not even good with people. I'm just a soldier who stayed alive. She stepped closer, wrapping her arms around his waist. You're my papa. Mark froze. Those 3 words hit harder than any blast, any gunshot, any war. He knelt slowly. You sure about that? Lyra nodded. You gave me water. You gave me safety. But most of all, you chose me. Lyra walked over, her eyes soft, her voice quiet. You don't owe us anything, Mark. He shook his head. No, but I want to. She placed a hand on his shoulder. Then come with us. Help us build what they tried to destroy. Behind them, Myra held up a piece of tech she found, an old translator core. This still works, she shouted. We can use it to teach. Mark smiled. Then I guess class starts tomorrow. Later, they buried the last of the weapons deep in the ground, sealed tight. Mark looked at them one last time before locking the case. I don't want to fight again, he said. Not if I don't have to. Lyra nodded. Then help us. Nira took his hand. They walked toward the ship that would take them to the new colony, a place made not of walls and shields, but of green trees, fresh water, soft soil, and loud laughter as they climbed aboard. Mark paused at the door and looked back one last time. The wind carried the smell of ash and the sound of peace, and in the middle of the scorched desert, the small memory stone continued to glow. The ship lifted. Inside, Nira curled up next to Mark, resting her head on his arm. Mira sat beside them, telling stories in broken English. Lyra stood at the window, watching the desert vanish below. Mark closed his eyes. He didn't dream of war. He dreamed of planting gardens, of laughter echoing through stone halls, of two small girls running through tall grass, safe, free, alive. And in the distance, always he heard it. That knock, that whisper, only this time it wasn't fear, it was hope.